to you, and thank you so much for finding time to be with us today. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're watching us. This is Unfiltered Friday edition, where we get to bring you the latest news and the headlines from across the continent, and also we get to revisit the events that made headlines across this week. And we have so much that we've been talking about, so we shall do a recap for that, as a lot of these news items are developing story. My name is Miriam Ogutu, and it is a pleasure to have you on board. And before we get into that, I'd like to bring us up to date with the latest news headlines, and we'll start with Kenya. On the Star newspaper, the main headline: ANC left a shell after Raila raids Mudavadi. Odinga promises bigger campaign machine that will dwarf Musalia Ruto alliance. You'll find that on page 4 and 5. On the Star newspaper, the widow of famous soccer fan Juma slaughtered like a cow. Very sad story indeed what happened there. And power lines encroachers must move out in 30 days. That is according to the state, and that is what we have on the front page of the Star newspaper this morning. And then we turn our attention to the Standard newspaper, and on the Standard newspaper, the main headline on the Standard newspaper this morning: hot contest for running mates gathers steam, and that Raila, Ruto and Kalonzo will pick their respective running mates from Mount Kenya is no secret. The question on everyone's lips is, of all the 10 contenders, who is the best suited to energize their tickets? That is on page 6 and 7 on the Standard newspaper. And prepare for tough race, Kalonzo wants rivals, and yesterday he was campaigning in his Ukambani bastion. And revealed Kirubi's 20 billion Kenya shillings worth of property and cars. That is on page 4. And private hospitals to turn away NHIF card holders. That is on page 12. And football #1 fan killed in land dispute. Isaac Juma lived a simple but colorful life. He kept football fans entertained thanks to his colorful displays, but yesterday he was hacked to death over a land dispute. That is on page 22 and 38 on the Standard newspaper. And then we look at the Daily Nation. Uhuru throws race wide open. A season of coalitions and political parties being signed into law by President Kenyatta yesterday has opened a new battlefront that will see each of the current 3 major formations, Azimio la Umoja, One Kenya Alliance and Kenya Kwanza, jostling to form the most formidable coalition party to deliver an electoral win. The law, which was initially thought to favor ODM leader Raila Odinga's Azimio, has thrown a lifeline to his opponents, who will use it to forge alliances. The story is on page 4 of the Daily Nation. Kiunjuri's dwindling fortunes. Barely 5 years ago, Mwangi Kiunjuri sat on the right-hand side of power, but things have changed, and the political career of the former agriculture minister seems to be on a downward trajectory. That is on page 7. And now he seems to be seeking an MP's job. And the killing of Juma there, and adieu Juma. Heaven gets a new sports cheerleader on page 49 of the Daily Nation. Famous Mara Cheetah killed in territorial war. That is on page 11. And counties which spent zero on development. That is on page 12. And NHIF private hospitals issue threat to withhold services. So in a nutshell, that is what we have on the leading newspapers here. And maybe I just read quickly what else we have from across the continent and see what I can get from other countries, and then we can get into our conversation this morning. I believe I do have that. Okay, thank you so much. So we start with the Daily Nation. A key message, daily news, I think from Tanzania. Key message: let's work together. Samia 62nd birthday. That was the key message. And a happy belated birthday to the first woman president of the Republic of Tanzania, Madam Samia Suluhu, indeed. All right, almost a year into her presidency, later on in a few weeks' time, I believe, after the sudden death of John Pombe Magufuli last year. All right, and still the citizen from Tanzania boost as Dubai lifts Tanzania a travel ban. And we look at the nation. And the nation is Buhari to military, don't spare bandits or terrorists. So finally, President Muhammadu Buhari is taking a stand when it comes to the fight of bandits and terrorists. It took him so much time, and he was so indecisive in how to handle this matter. So finally, he's telling the military not to spare these militant groups, the bandits, and the terrorists. I think they all do the same thing. They all terrorize the people of Nigeria. So to me, they're all terrorists. I don't even know why you're calling them bandits, because the bandits will just steal the cows and go. But this one walks into a village, they leave a trail of death and loss of property and lives. Like, this is unacceptable. So they're all terrorists to me, because they all fit that description according to their actions. All right, still on the Punch newspaper, one of the other newspapers from Nigeria, House Security Report forced Buhari to cancel planned subsidy removal. So you find that there, and federal government feared subsidy protests could be worse than end SARS, and the source representative to some on major oil marketers, transporters, customs, and others. A World Bank, IMF may decline Nigeria's loan request over fuel subsidies. And I think I was reading to you here yesterday over that. So maybe any one of our viewers from Nigeria, you can just give us an update in the comments. I'll read over what is happening and what this new field debacle is all about. The Herald, that is, I believe, from Zimbabwe, and Zimbabwe makes progress in human rights reforms, and the new work ethic at passport office, that is on the headline. A new day also from Zimbabwe, Cyclone Anna wreaks a havoc there, and a new vision from Uganda, ministers cows clash over money, and Parliament eulogizes Bile, and Kampala Abim women most abused. Okay, and IGP Achola moves 85 officers, and Ugandans World Health Organization wanted to oust Obote. Okay. All right, that is on page 50 and 51 on the new vision from Tanzania, and the daily from Uganda, and the Daily Monitor still from Uganda, uproar over house from Mutabile family. That is the main headline. And then I'll just move on to all right, I think we have it. We have all we need from across the continent, just a few of the headlines from across a few countries in the continent. So a very good morning to you. That is what we have. So I want to bring in Daniel Wesonga, my panelist this morning, and then Dr. David Matanga. He shall be joining us in a short bit. Daniel Wesonga, very good morning to you. Thank you for your time this morning.
Yes, a very good morning to you, Miriam Mogutu. Good morning to our viewers who are watching us here in Kenya, Africa, and the rest of the world. It is my pleasure to be on the conversation this morning.
Very well. It's nice to have you. And before we get into the politics, because I know once we get into the politics, we'll just do that until the end of the show. So let's look at some other news first, and then we will get into the politics. And I want to look at this devolution. I know partly it's political, but I apologize. I think my house sits right on the flight path to some flights from Air Force, I believe. So usually around this time they're always flying about here. But anyway, okay, so page 12 of the Daily Nation, about half of the counties did not use their development funds in the first quarter of the current financial year, dealing a blow to health, water, infrastructure sectors. In her latest report for the period between July and September 2021, Controller of Budget Margaret Nyakango says 22 counties spent 49.28 billion Kenya shillings, or 93.3% of their total expenditure on recurring payments, including salaries and allowances. Development projects were allocated a measly 3.5 billion Kenya shillings, which was not utilized. Economic growth is largely dependent on how much investment is made in key areas such as infrastructure and health. Counties that spend nothing on development activities are Baringo, Bungoma, Busia, Homa Bay, Isiolo, Kajiado, Kericho, Kilifi, and Kisumu. Others are Machakos, Marsabit, Migori, Mombasa, Nairobi City, Nakuru, Narok, Nyandarua, Siaya, Taita Taveta, Trans Nzoia, Vihiga, and Wajir. So at least for Nairobi, we do have the NMS, even if they do not allocate money in the county, but at least we know NMS has been a savior for this county. But as a Kenyan, Daniel Basong, when you listen to this report, what comes to your mind?
I believe, Miriam, it's a bit unfortunate that our governors do really lack priority when it comes to the budget expenditure in the counties. And most of the governors have actually been spending the taxpayers' money in matters or maybe in projects that do not really cater for the interest of the people at large. Instead of building more schools, building more infrastructure in terms of roads, supplying medicine to the hospitals, you realize that some of these monies have been going to the pockets of their cronies, and a lot of it actually, Miriam, it is lost through corruption, because you realize that apart from devolving funds from the national government to the county government, corruption, nepotism, and tribalism was also devolved in the county government. So therefore, to me, it is a very, very sorry state of affairs that some counties are unable to actually utilize some of the monies to be able to advance developmental agenda for the local people who need those services, who need those facilities. Just some few years ago, we had counties like Turkana actually returning money to the national government after paying salaries and all the perks that their county employees should be enjoying. So it really begs the question, did they not identify even a single project where they could channel the money? And this is not a matter of Turkana alone. We've had so many counties which, apart from maybe not allocating money to development and all the rest of it to going to recurrent expenditure, it actually returns some of the money back to the national government. And you realize that these are more likely to be counties which are deemed to be marginalized, counties which are deprived infrastructural development and all those facilities that the major city counties actually enjoy. So to me, I think it's a lack of proper planning, and that is why there's need for us to elect managers, people who have been able to run companies, organizations, to go into the counties as county governors, not just any Tom, Dick, and Harry who presents himself or herself really deserves to be a governor. A governor should be someone with conscious of economic planning, strategic management, and also someone who knows what should be the priority when it comes to allocating money, budgetary allocations to various projects, to recurrent expenditure, and all the other things. So in essence, Miriam, there should be someone who is able to balance all these and ensure at the end of the day, they do not deprive the people of development, because development is the key basis to why the proponents of devolution were pushing for devolution, because they felt that some parts of the country were not as much developed as maybe the Nairobi county, or maybe the other parts of the country where maybe leadership has been coming from. So therefore, with devolution, we aim at bringing equality to the entire country. And by bringing equality can only come through equal development, equal sharing of resources, and of course, that can only be done through devolving the money all the way to the counties. That is the only way a county like Wajir can have a hospital of an equal status such as Kiambu. That is the only way Turkana can have a stadium of an equal status like Kisumu. But without proper planning, these will only remain a pipe dream, because all the monies will go to recurrent expenditure, and the remaining money, if there's no any viable project to be pumped in, it will be returned to the national government. Or maybe if we have a project, but it is a ghost project, then all this money will go into a pitless, a bottomless pit with no any returns or incentives to the people of that particular county. Miriam, I submit.
Thank you so much. And I know you've said that perhaps a lot of these counties that have been mentioned here that have not spent, have not, they have spent nothing. According to this report, Daniel was saying that they have spent nothing. no amount was allocated on development activities, and the rest who at least, did something. They didn't even spend much. I think they spent about, because the 93.3% went to allowances and wages and whatnot, and then the rest of the smaller percentage went to development, initiative or activities in this county. But the ones we are looking at right now, these are counties that spend zero on development activities. So Kisumu is there, Machakos is there, Mombasa is there, Nairobi City is there, but we know NMS took over a key, but we can say Nairobi, things have been happening when it comes to development. And then Siaya is there. So when you look at these big towns and cities, because initially you would think maybe it's, counties that are a bit marginalized, and maybe, I don't know, we always, find, excuses sometimes, I believe, to these counties, and the poor leadership that sometimes is exhibited from these counties, and indeed across other counties in the country. But when you hear these key towns and cities, where in these counties, and Kisumu, Nairobi, Mombasa, Nakuru, Machakos, the county bosses and the planning committee in these counties decided, I guess, that maybe people from these counties have no needs. They spent nothing on development activities. I don't know how you feel about that.
Miriam, I think it's a bit unfortunate that we do have counties like Siaya, Busia, Homa Bay also still lagging behind. And I'll really maybe just say that these are a matter of neglect, and leaders just don't giving much attention to whatever they're expected to do in terms of development. You really see a big difference if you went to Kisumu in the first 5 years of devolution, and whatever change that Governor Anyang' Nyong'o has been able to bring within the 5 years that has been into the office. So that tells you that the leader that you elect as a person or as a people really has great implication, has a great impact on how maybe the county might turn out in terms of development. If you go to maybe a county like Machakos or Makueni or maybe Kitui, and you try and compare it, let's say, with even a county like Embu or Meru, you realize there's a very big difference in terms of development. But you realize one thing: these counties receive almost the same amount of money. These counties sometimes they're even in the same region, where the factors that could affect one county is actually the same factors that could affect another in terms of infrastructure and all that. But simply because the priorities of certain governors is not in making sure that they allocate monies to the rightful or impactful projects that will be able to uplift the people of that particular region, then you realize that these counties are actually stagnating. You go to a county like Siaya, you cannot even you cannot even believe that you are in a county headquarters in Siaya town itself. You go to a county like Homa Bay, you might think maybe you're just passing through maybe a small town on the highway on your way to Migori. So to me, I believe we need, governors need rather to invest in projects which will bring incentives to even outside investors to come and be able to invest in those counties. For example, look at what Charity Ngilu is doing in Kitui with the cotton, with the garment industry. Look at what Kivusa Kibwana is doing with the mangoes in Makueni. Look at what other counties, even counties like Wajir, is doing in terms of even building the infrastructures in terms of hospitals. Look at what Oparanya is doing with Kakamega town, That is what governors should be doing. With devolution, you shouldn't again lament that my region is being left out when it comes to development. We shouldn't be having towns like Busia, where we do have potholes even in the CBD, You cannot even tell that this is CBD because there's dust everywhere. No road is being paved, no one is sweeping the road. Whereas when you go to Kisumu, despite it being a city, you can spot some difference, Miriam, because Nakuru is also a city, same status as Kisumu, but it is not as clean as Kisumu. The planning that that is being done in Kisumu. I don't believe it's even being done in Nairobi at the moment, because we have in Nairobi building popping up each day and anywhere, you know, without any kind of plan. Today you build you build your beautiful mansionette somewhere around Nairobi, and before you know it, someone is erecting 700 bed sitters beside your compound. So to me, I believe it's all about planning. It's all about selecting projects that are of priority, projects that will actually revolutionize the economy of that particular county and bring an incentive to investors to come and be able to invest in the county, so that at the end of the day, you are able to create employment to the people of the county. At the end of the day, you are able to make sure that money circulates in the county and you put money in the pockets of the people of that particular county. Long gone are the days of where people would say, because I come from, let's say, West Pokot, that is why, because we are not able to have electricity, that is why we are not able even to treat our people in our own county. We have to transport people who are sick to Trans Nzoia and all that, because counties are given money, Miriam. And if we can only be honest with ourselves, then we can be able to achieve optimal prosperity for each and every county. And I'll go back to whatever Dr. Masanga always says: patriotism. Do we have a social contract in this country? It is because of lack of social contract and patriotism that we have governors and some of the cronies who actually loot this money which is meant for development, this money which is meant to build hospitals, to pave roads, and to be able even to build industries that we do have such kind of scenarios to the counties. So if these people would actually realize that if you are building a society, if you are pioneer to a certain status of your society, you know, you want to elevate your society, then you have to put grid behind you and actually engage on the basis of selflessness, and be able to also look at the bigger picture. That is what most developed democracies do. When you read the book by Lee Kuan Yew, the inaugural or the founding Prime Minister of Singapore, he says that when they took power in the 1960s, they were having one key question to be able to answer as leaders. And the question was whether to take this money that was before them and make themselves rich, or maybe choose the path of honesty and integrity and make Singapore a great nation. And the decisions they made in the 1960s is what has made Singapore today to be among the Asian tigers. Singapore today is a first world country, whereas in 1963, it had to send their ministers here in Kenya to be able to benchmark with what Kenya was doing that Singapore needed to learn. But look where we are today, or more than 50 years ago. They sent people to Tanzania to learn from Tanzania, because Tanzania was doing better than Singapore. They sent people to Uganda, but look where Tanzania is today. Look at where Uganda is today, more than 50 years down the line. I believe, Miriam, if we choose integrity, if you choose to be patriotic and actually be very, very conscious to the social contract, then we shall have a bit of change in our counties. But as it is right now, when Kenyans still elect thugs into offices based on political emotions, I believe we cannot be able to achieve that, Miriam. I submit.
Very well, thank you so much. And before we leave that topic, let me just, let's look at the other side of the coin, all right? And though they have not paid pending bills, and of course those counties that we were just looking at, according to the controller of budget, a lot of these counties that have allocated nothing to development, a lot of these counties also are the ones who are having a higher pending bills, led by Nairobi city itself and Nairobi County. And though they have not paid pending bills, some of the counties have already started spending on development projects. Turkana has spent 240 million Kenya shillings on development projects, and Meru 141.8 million Kenya shillings. Others include Tharaka Nithi with 122.1 million, and Nandi, of course, has also spent a good amount of money in development activities and all that. And West Pokot and Tana River, Uasin Gishu, and Nyamira, Elgeyo Marakwet, Samburu, and others. And Turkana, for the first time, seems to be leading the pack in a good way. It is one of the counties that it is topping in terms of the amount of money that it has set aside for development activities. I wish the controller of budget would have given us a breakdown of this money. Can they point to us where actually this money has been used? Because we know a lot of times, the last time we were having this conversation, it was discovered that now counties have discovered another way of misspending, the public money. They allocate money to activities like tree planting for environment, for instance, and it was discovered that nobody can give anything to back that information up. No photos were taken during the tree planting. They can't even take anywhere to where those trees were planted. So when they say these counties have spent this much in matters development, can they give us a breakdown, or is just other white elephants here that you're being told? Is it important if they can give us a breakdown?
Miriam, I think we are innately a corrupt country by our own definition, and these kind of scenarios are not rare to our leadership. And of course, as you put it correctly, these are white elephant projects. And I believe if these governors or maybe county leaders were taken to task to explain where maybe these trees or forests are, they'll actually shy away. They won't get someone to actually take them to the forest where they planted this tree. And I just reminded me a scenario in my own county of Busia where 30 million Kenyan shillings was actually lost in the same pretense that they were actually planting some forests in a place in Busia. And when they were asked to actually take the auditors to where this forest is, no one could actually be able to show up and be able to maybe account for this particular money or the forest that they were allegedly maybe planting. So me, I believe from where I sit, Miriam, that this is money which ends up in the pockets of the cronies of the governors. And of course, no one can be able to account for it. You go to Homa Bay, for example, you realize that the best hotels that are in town are actually owned by the county employees. You go and look at the best bungalows or mansionettes in the village, and actually they are owned by county employees. And that is the trend even in Siaya County. That is the trend even in Busia, and many other counties, Miriam. And I believe it's a bit unfortunate because, like I said before, and I will reiterate again, devolution was meant to bring equality, and equality in terms of sharing the national cake. So if you're given your share of national cake, and you do not share it with your constituents, you do not share it with the entire country, rather this money ends up in the pockets of a few individuals, then you might as well be depriving your region or to share in the development that the entire country is enjoying. And soon enough, the residents who keep electing these leaders, and the leaders who keep stealing people's money, we realize that their regions will actually lag behind in terms of development, to the point that they will actually be going to other counties to seek some kind of special services like health, education, and many other more. And also, you realize that if a county is not doing well in terms of development, even in infrastructure, these will not attract investors in those particular counties. And what does that mean? It means that these people will face the problem of unemployment. And being a third world country, Miriam, I believe the youthful population is actually growing more rapidly. These young people need jobs. And if they are not given jobs, or they do not find anything helpful to do in economic wise, then we will have a myriad of problems, ranging from crime, ranging from, a lot of things, chaos and all that. Because when young people are very idle, and these are people who are full of energy, then it means they are susceptible to any illegal activity that might present itself in the day. So to me, I believe these county governors and also the people of those counties which are not taking this seriously should actually think critically of what the future holds if they do not get serious about putting every coin to accountability. But to me, Miriam, I believe let every county do as it wishes with its monies, but at the end of the day, the repercussions will be there. You don't expect the national government to do everything for you when they are having an allocation of almost 10 billion per financial year to the county, and there's nothing to show for it other than paying salaries and maybe doing some white elephant projects here and there. So Miriam, at the end of the day, the burden will come back to haunt the community and the leadership that is squandering these particular resources. I submit.
Very well, and indeed, I think devolution was a wonderful thing, and there were reasons as to why it was felt necessary to have that in our constitution and to introduce that in our governance system. And I don't know if we had proper structures in place as to how this devolution will be implemented, because I think a lot of times we are missing the point. If you have all counties spending about 93.3% of the money they've been allocated in paying salaries and wages and allowances, that is a problem we have in our hands, and there has to be a way this has to be addressed so that there's an understanding of why it's even important, why it was even important to have this devolution in Kenya in the first place. So all right, we will continue following this and seeing how this works out. We turn our attention now to the back page of the Daily Nation. The government and private hospitals are in a standoff after the latter threatened to turn away patients under the National Medical Insurance Scheme starting on Tuesday. According to the Kenya Association of Private Hospitals and the National Hospital Insurance Fund, NHIF proposes to drastically slash doctors' fees in new contracts, which will have a significant impact on patients and which not viable to their institutions. The hospitals have said patients with NHIF cards will be denied services until further notice. Dr. Timothy Olweny, KPHA Secretary General, said the new contracts were hurriedly drafted without adequate time for perusal, and implementation would be counterproductive. He said new contract for 2022 to 2024 wouldn't work for them because they have not had a chance to study them, and the input of private hospitals was not sought, and save for a few providers. So of course the people that stand to really suffer should this move be implemented starting next week, a lot of them will be the civil service, who at least have been able to accessing perhaps good hospitals using the NHIF card. So if this threat is made true, what kind of impact will it have?
Thank you, Miriam. And of course, that is another repercussion of corruption in our system. And you realize that with NHIF, there has been allegations that they actually advance in full payment or maybe a big amount of money to public hospitals, and also those private hospitals who are owned by people who have connection in government. But whenever you are a private hospitals or maybe a private practitioner who wants to claim payment from NHIF, then you're gonna be getting peanuts. And unless you know someone, an insider from NHIF, then you're not gonna get even paid sometimes. So to me, I believe it's very, very unfortunate, because the impact of this is that most Kenyans who duly pay their NHIF monthly premiums will be denied of better healthcare, because you might want to go to a certain hospital, but because maybe of certain constraints, you find that a private hospital that accepts NHIF is the most convenient one for you, or maybe for one reason or another, you just want to go to this hospital. But because they have now rendered NHIF card as not acceptable because of non-payment, I believe now these people cannot be able to get these services. So to me, I believe rather than having these push and pull, why can't we have NHIF cleaned up, so that we do not have this kind of acrimony between the private hospitals and NHIF. Because at the end of the day, Miriam, we have Kenyans who pay money to NHIF, so many of them, millions of Kenyans. And at the end of the day, they do not use the money because you get someone complaining, I wanted to use NHIF, this amount of money was approved, but when I went to my hospital, only half of it was actually approved, and all that, kind of incoherent, maybe results coming from the NHIS side. So to me, I believe these another, apart from AFIA, the cartels that AFIA House, we also have cartels in NHIF and NSSF, which ought to be clean. And therefore, it will be my clarion call to President Uhuru Kenyatta and those ones who are concerned about this particular agency to go and do a thorough audit of how business is conducted at NHIF, because a lot of Kenyans are launching complaints, and now it is the hospitals now who are actually retracting from having any kind of partnership with NHIF. This is going to have a very, very big implication, because remember, currently, as even they say they are going to stop, we already have so many Kenyans who are visiting those private hospitals and actually are banking on NHIF. So having that kind of acrimony will only mean that they will not be receiving services from these private hospitals beginning tomorrow, beginning on Monday, sorry. So to me, I think it's a bit unfortunate, owing to the fact that health is a human right, even in our constitution. And President Uhuru Kenyatta is actually pushing towards universal health coverage in these particular countries. These are people who are actually derailing the legacy of President Uhuru Kenyatta. And these few bad apples in government should not be allowed to have their cake and eat it, Miriam. So to me, I believe NHIF heads should roll, and an audit should be done on how NHIF conducts its business. Just the same thing that happened to KPLC. It should be the same thing that should happen to NHIF and many other parastatals, government parastatals that have been misusing Kenyans' money and no services being offered at all, Miriam. I submit.
Okay, thank you so much. And hopefully there'll be a meeting between, NHIF and these private hospitals so that they're able to harmonize, how they work together. Because at the end of the day, I think the private hospitals are saying the money that NHIF has capped, there's a maximum. If you say you're going to have an operation, your appendix removed, there's a maximum that, NHIF is going to pay. But when you go to the private hospitals, their maximum is a bit more. So there needs to be, this needs to be harmonized, because at the end of the day, a lot of Kenyans bought into this idea that if I'm able to pay 500 shillings per month and I have my NHIF card, I can access at least, quality, health services. So this will go a long way in hurting a lot of Kenyans who don't have alternatives of private insurance to visit this hospital. So this is a matter of urgency, and hopefully this will be sorted out and we can sit down and talk, because at the end of the day, it is the Kenyans who cannot really afford other alternatives who will suffer, and that's it. And I think if this threat really comes to pass next week on Tuesday, and that will deal a big blow to President Uhuru Kenyatta's one of the big four agendas there, Daniel Wasonga, as you've said, the universal health coverage. So that will really bring us way back from where we started. We don't want that. You need to make steps moving forward, not forward and then you're coming back. So this has to be sorted. Very well. And speaking of health, before we get into politics, I know there's so many things happening, and sometimes you just need to quiet that and look at other things that are important to the people of Kenya and indeed Africa, and then we can get into the politics, okay? All right, so Kenya seems to be on the cusp of flattening the curve of its fifth COVID-19 wave, with official data showing dip in new cases and a lower positivity rate. The nation's analysis of data from Health Ministry shows that In the past 7 days, the country recorded an average positivity rate of 5.5%. Last Saturday, the positivity rate was below 5% for the first time since the peak of the new wave in November last year. In November, the country recorded its highest positivity rate since the onset of the pandemic. The lowest number of cases was, however, recorded last Sunday, when 91 people tested positive for the viral disease from a sample size of 3,229, which translated to 2.8% positivity rate. Should this trend go on for the next 2 weeks, the country can declare a flattened curve. So we have some hope at the end of this tunnel. Should we cling on to that? Or with COVID, you never know. It might just make another turn and take us back to, where we started.
I think maybe we are living at a very uncertain times, Miriam. When everyone thought that perhaps Delta is going to be the last of the COVID-19 variants, then we had Omicron, and we therefore do not know. Perhaps in the long run, we might have to live with COVID-19, And just recently, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who is a medic, and whatever he was telling me is that with time, COVID could end up being reduced, just being a normal flu, because even the severity, you remember the Omicron virus has been very, very vicious in terms of the infections. But all in all, you realize that we had so very few people also getting hospitalized for the same. So with me, I believe COVID is not yet away from us. We are not yet out of the woods in regards to the pandemic, but my hope is that perhaps the severity of the disease itself is going to go down, in as much as people might get also infected in future, in as much as we might have another wave coming on, and of course, having all those kind of scenarios. But I believe the severity of the disease perhaps is going to reduce, just as my medic friend said. So for me, if that is going to be the case, then I believe at least there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Because if it becomes just like any other normal flu, then it means people can easily wade past it, can actually live with it and be able to continue with the other economic activities and social activities without the worry of having a lockdown or maybe a closure of borders for various countries. You realize that was the economic cost of COVID-19 was the biggest cost the world has ever paid, in terms of even the economies melting down and all that. Because without that, when you look at the numbers here in Kenya, up to this particular point, only 500 and something people have died. May their souls rest in peace. But the number is not that high. But when you look at the economic price the people of Kenya have paid, so many people had to close their businesses. So many people had to be retrenched. So many people were just driven out of the market, because there's nowhere to sell their commodities, because people are no longer visiting places where they used to visit. People are no longer mingling and all that. So to me, I believe, Miriam, we might have COVID for quite some time, but the best thing is that if we have the vaccine, and also the severity of the disease is going to perhaps reduce as per the numbers of maybe deaths which are being reported, lower death rate which is being reported by day, then I believe we are almost out of the woods, but still the virus will be there with us. So my call maybe is to not just lower our guard, and also let's make sure that we get vaccinated, because also you realize that apart from maybe the severity of the disease maybe going a bit weaker, growing a bit weaker, you realize that people who had been vaccinated were the ones who are not feeling the implications or maybe the side effects of the virus. But those ones who are not vaccinated are still in the danger of maybe even being hospitalized and all that. So to me, I believe we need to look at all frontiers and be able to fight it from all corners. Make sure we take the vaccines, but also make sure that we maintain all the other protocols that have been put there by the World Health Organization, Miriam. I submit.
Very well. Very well, thank you so much. And so now let's just get into Kenyans' favorite thing to do. That is talking politics. For me, sometimes it's just too much that we have to talk about it because we know we are in an election year. So that is what we have to read on the front pages of our newspapers, and those are the headlines, even on the local television, because we know that Kenyan elections is an event, and it is an event, that starts 2 years. So we've been on a political roller coaster since the last time we had elections. We've not stopped. We've not taken a breather. So we have to keep talking. And before we really get into it so much, we know that Senate passed the political parties bill, and President Uhuru Kenyatta signed that into law yesterday. But before we get into that, but still on the same issue, now Deputy President William Ruto's allies say they will work with activists to challenge the changes to the political parties law, even as some described it as a blessing in disguise. The political parties amendment bill, endorsed by the Senate on Wednesday and signed into law by President Kenyatta yesterday, sets rules for coalitions in both the National Assembly and Senate. Lawmakers alleged the deputy president opposed the bill, while supporters of President Kenyatta and ODM leader Raila Odinga backed it. The DP's allies say they will challenge the constitutionality of the law, describing it as discriminatory and aimed at shoring up Mr. Odinga's election prospects in the August polls. They singled out clauses that they say usurp the powers of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC. Our main concern is clause 22, which grants the registrar of political parties powers to manage parties, registers and nominations. That is what Muranga Senator Irungu Kangata told the nation. But Elgeyo Marakwet Senator Kipchumba Murkomen seemed to suggest that the law is a blow to the DP's opponents, and he's quoted as saying, "We have effectively given Azimio the rope they wanted to hang themselves with. Let no one come back crying to us after the April nominations." End of that short story there. So some of the DP allies, Daniel Wasonga, seeks to go to court and challenge, especially that clause 22. Which Kangata says that could be a problem. What do you make of this?
Miriam, one thing about the beauty of democracy is that the winner will always have their way and the losers will have their say. So to me, I believe there was a time when they will raise those particular concerns in the both house, the lower and the upper house. And if their concerns were a bit maybe convincing enough, I believe they will have marshaled enough numbers to be able to have that particular clause amended in the rightful houses, that is the parliament, which is actually the house where laws are enacted. But saying that you are going to go to court to be able to fight these particular amendment, these particular clause, I believe it is a no mean feat, Miriam, to me, because at the end of the day, we are only 6 months to the August general election, less than 7 months, or rather, to the August general election. And we do have time constraint here. Remember, right now, the law has been assented, the bill has been assented into law by President Uhuru Kenyatta yesterday. And of course, it stipulates that by February 9th, if you want to vie on a particular party, then you have to be a member by February and 9th of February. So which is only some few weeks to come. So to me, I believe the time constraint will actually throw their case out of court. But because these are people who do not understand whatever they want, I believe they will nonetheless proceed with it. But of course, defeat is imminent in whichever way you chop it. And one thing maybe I would like to reiterate is that this bill is not a bill meant to help Raila Odinga or President Uhuru Kenyatta. It is meant to help every Kenyan, and every Kenyan who wants to get into a coalition to be for anything in any coalition. It makes sure that we have a legal backing to the promises that coalition partners make to one another through their MOU. In that, if they do not hold on to these particular, or maybe respect the MOU that they had, then the law will have to take its course. And yesterday, I remember we discussed this and we said the only reason why the NAC coalition collapsed, the only reason why the CORD coalition collapsed and the NASA coalition collapsed, it is because we did not have anything that will anchor these MOU and agreements to law. And therefore, that is why we need these political parties amendment bill, which has now become a law. So to me, I think the allies of the deputy presidents are just there to derail the momentum of the IEBC. They're there to derail the momentum of their competitors. But I know one thing for sure, that they will not be given this particular time. They had their ample time in parliament to debate and to be able to give a convincing reason, even to the other members of parliament from the other political divide, to be able to have this rectified, but they did not do so. Instead, whatever they did was to shout one another down, to fight and to chaos in parliament, which did not yield any kind of positive fruit. We've seen in the US where we have such kind of debates, and members come on the floor of the House, read whatever amendments they want to be made. They bring out a very robust and very convincing argument, and they're actually able to also convince members of the opposite side to come and vote with them. We have seen it even in Britain, happening during some of the contentious discussions, the debates they have in the House. So why not Kenya? Why not Tanga? To me, I believe these are people who lack an agenda, and they should find something useful to do. Miriam, I submit.
All right, very well. And before we get to the signing, I think there's a story here that we need to look at very quickly, and that I see on page 7 on the Daily Nation, Kinjuri Star Hattles down on Laikipia East. Barely 5 years ago, Mwangi Kinjuri sat on the right-hand side of power, and just 2 years ago, he was still being touted as a potential Mount Kenya kingpin as he eyed the deputy presidency. But things have changed, and the political career of the former Agriculture Cabinet Secretary seems to be on a downward trajectory. Mr. Kinjuri will contest the Laikipia East parliamentary seat that he held for 15 years when he was CS. The residents of Laikipia County, especially Nanyuki, would know when he was in town. Some refer to him as Kinjuri wa Kibiririki, meaning Kinjuri of the helicopter. He would fly from one public event to another across the vast Laikipia County landscape. Only a select who's who would appear in the lineup to welcome him as he stepped out of the chopper. It's a very long story. I'll not bore you with too much information, but you could go read it. Perhaps you will appreciate the journey Mwangi Kinjuri has had as far as politics is concerned. But perhaps it started in 1997 at the age of 27, when Kinjuri did the unthinkable as a Matatu tout and decided to run for the first time for the Laikipia East parliamentary race, which he won under DP, the Democratic Party. And then we know what happened. He was fired in 2000. In 2013, Kinjuri contested the Laikipia governor seat and lost. In 2020, the year Kinjuri was dismissed as an agriculture CS by President Kenyatta. He had also served as devolution CS. And in 2016, when Kinjuri folded his Grand National Union Party and joined Jubilee, he campaigned for the re-election of President Kenyatta. 2017, the year Uhuru Kenyatta was re-elected president of Kenya. So do we remember him after, I think, the last job he held as a CS for agriculture, and we know what was happening during that time. There's so much going on in the agriculture ministry. So Mwangi Kinjuri seems to be slowly, going into a political obscurity, if I might say that. When you look at his career, Daniel Vasonga perhaps, and you look at these politicians and these decisions that right now they're making, sometimes you should, because I believe he also formed his party, the one with the heart emoji. My son loves it for some reason, like a heart emoji, right? So he formed that party. I can't exactly remember the name. And now he has to go back to where he started and run for the position of a member of parliament. What perhaps lessons should some of the politicians in this country learn about, one, timing when it comes to some political decisions you're making, And two, I know it's good to have dreams and ambitions, but sometimes when you shoot, you shoot. Could you make it realistic at least?
Miriam, to me, I won't talk about timing or maybe having lofty dreams when it comes to Mwangi Kiunjuri. The only point here is that that people could learn from Mwangi Kiunjuri is that always work with people who are trustworthy, people who mean well to you, and people who can support you, even if today you were to move from where you are to another place. And in this regard, it is in relation to William Ruto. You know, William Ruto misused Mwangi Kiunjuri when he was given a job by President Uhuru Kenyatta. Remember, he was to vie for Laikipia governor in 2017, but President Uhuru Kenyatta advised him not to vie. Of course, he was not going to win Laikipia governor, for those who know, because Governor Nderitu Muriithi was a very, very strong independent candidate. So all in all, President Uhuru Kenyatta, being a gentleman quite enough, he actually fulfilled his promise and appointed him into cabinet as a Minister of Agriculture. But whatever Kiunjuri did in the Ministry of Agriculture was actually to cut deals and be able to loot money which is meant to help poor Kenyan farmers and take it all the way to Karen to fund William Ruto's premature campaigns. And William Ruto actually incited, he became a provocateur to Mwangi Kiunjuri to an extent that he made the minister become rebellious even to a man who appointed him to that particular position. And what happened when Mwangi Kiunjuri was actually sacked from the cabinet? William Ruto deserted him. So he formed this party simply because of being depressed and feeling, you know, perhaps he should have something to just revive his fortunes, because he had stayed out of politics for some time when he was serving as a minister. So this came out to him as a shock, you know. So this party was not conjured out of maybe just having ambitions that were there, but it is because he had been he had become so much in conflict with his boss, simply because they were occasioning dealership into the Ministry of Agriculture. They were stealing money and taking it to Karen to campaign. They were taking deals from other investors outside the country. And therefore, the president had no otherwise than to part ways with Kiunjuri. You remember, even he was so much into William Ruto's campaigns to an extent that handling locusts was quite a no-mean feat for him. So that was a man, this is a man who actually had lost glory with his boss, first of all, who is President Uhuru Kenyatta. And secondly, his crony who actually incited him to indulging in all kinds of illegal activities at the ministry and promising all the lofty promises that he could make, actually deserted him. So to me, TSP was formed out of, not out of necessity, but out of convenience. And therefore, that is why you see people have not been able to join the party even as much. And the last time I heard about the party, some members were defecting to UDA, and the last one, the Secretary General actually defected to ODM the other month. And to me, I believe Kiunjuri formed this party with an expectation that, having supported William Ruto, having taken some of the money, even from the ministry to Karen for premature campaigns, then this man will support me as his deputy, or will pick me as his deputy. And I believe that is some of the clandestine agreement that they had with William Ruto. But once he was just out of cabinet, I believe William Ruto has deserted the man. You can see the way he talks, you know, this is a man who is depressed. This is a man who does not even understand whatever is happening to him. So I really doubt if he's gonna
allow me, and because of that, because of what you're saying, Daniel, sorry, just allow me to cut you short so that I just feed a part of this story that I'd like to get your thoughts on, even as we finish up on that story and move on to something else. And now he said during an interview with the Daily Nation a couple of days ago, that is on today's Daily Nation, page 7, I want to represent Laikipia East residents at the country's decision-making table. My track record is there for all to see, he said on Sunday. Mr. Kiunjuri appealed to residents to vote for Deputy President William Ruto. And he's quoted as saying, if I clinch this seat and Dr. Ruto appoints me to represent my people at a top level, I think as a CS, I will resign as MP, just like Charles Keter and Joseph Nkaiseri, Mr. Kinjuri told residents at Matanya village during a football tournament. So if you are running for a member of parliament to represent your people in parliament because you think you can best, you can best represent their interest, but at the same time you're thinking you're clinging on hope and hoping that when you are elected, and if at all the deputy president becomes president and he decides to give you the position of a CS, you would gladly resign from that position of representing your people and take up that position. So you really don't understand, or you really don't have the intention, or I don't know if he knows what he's doing by going back to wanting to represent the people of Laikipia West. If his motivation is, if I'm elected, I have no problem abandoning the interests of the people who elected me for me to be given a position as a CS. He should make a decision. Do you want to be a CS and hopefully support DP Ruto and all that, and then hopefully he will appoint you should he become the president, or do you want to go and serve your people in parliament? This is confusing.
I think Miriam Mwangi Kiunjuri is also suffering from Stockholm syndrome. Since, previously he has talked bitterly about William Ruto, and especially when William Ruto terms his party as a tribal village outfit, and the fact that William Ruto also raided his party and stole all his party officials, convinced them to cross over to UDA, and now Kiunjuri coming and campaigning for William Ruto, those are symptoms of the Stockholm syndrome. And to me, he still doesn't mean business when he says he wants to go for Laikipia East parliamentary. Whatever he's doing is trying to actually look for William Ruto's attention. And that is why he even created the TSP party other than joining UDA. He wanted William Ruto's attention so that he will be maybe selected to become one of his running mates. And William Ruto seems to be ignoring him instead and actually taking away his key party officials. Right now, he's talking about vying for Laikipia East, but at the backdrop of it, he's actually saying he wants also maybe if he's selected to be a minister, then he's gonna go like Ketero Nkaiseri. So to me, I believe his key goal is not to become an MP for Laikipia East. His key goal is to end up in William Ruto's government. And that is all Mwangi Kiunjuri has been doing since his sacking from cabinet. He created TSP, thinking that William Ruto will see it and then call him so that they form a coalition with UDA, or maybe William Ruto joins TSP. That did not happen. Right now, he's campaigning for Laikipia East. I don't know whether he's going to get it. Perhaps maybe he should learn from people who were MPs in those days from 2000 to 2007, who tried to vie for the same seat years later. They haven't been able to recapture the seat. That is the most difficult thing in Kenya, Miriam, currently. So to me, and owing to the fact that his competitor in the Laikipia East parliamentary is Ketu Aruguru, who is in Tangatanga, I really doubt even the deputy president is going to support his candidature. So to me, I think these are man in a crisis. And on top of it, I believe he is also suffering from the Stockholm syndrome. And it's really, really difficult to understand where he actually stands in terms of the national or even local political inclination. Maybe just not a related matter, but allow me to mention that this is the same crisis that Moses Kuria is also facing with his Chama Chakazi. He doesn't like the way William Ruto treats him with the so-called tribal village party, but all the same, he wants to also please William Ruto and make him acceptable before his table. So to me, I think these are people who are confused. And before they know it, very soon with this new law coming into place, they will actually be homeless without anywhere to run to in terms of forming coalitions and maybe aligning appropriately for the 2022 general election. And maybe just to mention, Miriam, anyone who is thinking that the country has the luxury of going into a rerun, or maybe thinking that there's any presidential poll that will go into a rerun anytime soon, they might be met with a very, very rude shock come the 9th of August or the 10th of August later this year. Because whatever I know, this election is going to be a one-round win, and there will be no rerun for that particular matter. So let them align appropriately before time is late for them to make a better decision. I submit.
All right, very well. And speaking of political realignment, yesterday a lot was said during that rally in Ukambani. I don't know if you watched that clip by Cyrus Chirongo. He seems to be a man on a mission, and he's been spewing some things that are not quite in favor of ANC leader Musalia Mudavadi. And so page 6 of the Daily Nation, ODM leader Raila Odinga yesterday dared Deputy President William Ruto to a titanic battle ahead of the August 9th general election as his camp prepares to register as the New Umoja movement as a coalition party. This follows the signing of the Political Parties Amendment Bill into law by President Uhuru Kenyatta yesterday. It amends the Political Parties Act of 2011 by introducing the concept of coalition political parties, outlining their functions, and changes the criteria for accessing the political parties fund. Speaking at Chungwa House, where he received more than 15 MCAs from ANC and Fort Kenya from Kakamega and Busia counties, Mr. Odinga promised to fight for economic liberation, and he accused the DP Ruto and Musalia Mudavadi and Moses Wetangula of coming together to continue plundering the country's resources. So in a nutshell, that story yesterday, the Azimio la Umoja, headed by Raila Odinga, received 15 MCAs who switched to ODM from ANC and Fort Kenya from the western side of the country. So those are the strongholds of ANC and Fort Kenya parties. So we talk about that, and also if you can recall what Cyrus Chirongo was saying yesterday and the damage that perhaps it might cause to Musalia Mudavadi moving forward, even as he presents himself as a very clean man as far as Kenyan politics are concerned. All these things that are being said damage his reputation, or it's already damaged?
I believe these things are being said by his close confidants, and therefore Kenyans have the right to have some degree of maybe believing them. They say, Chinua Achebe once said that if an alligator comes out of the waters one day and he tells you that the crocodile is sick, then you have to believe him. Cyrus Jirongo was in the same government with Musalia Mudavadi. These are people who have worked not once, not twice, not thrice, but they have worked for all those years. Even 2002, they were still in KANU. These are KANU surrogates, people who were there when the economy was being brought down, people who knew whatever was happening in government, because all of them at one particular point, they were actually the kitchen cabinet of President Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi. They were actually had the president's ears. They could directly even make a phone call to the president and he'll pick up. So these are people who know each other quite well. So when they choose to wash their linen in public, then all the Kenyans have to do is to listen keenly and know the leaders that they have been having over time. So to me, I take Jirongo's sentiments quite seriously. And of course, Kenyans are privy to the fact that these particular scandals he was talking about really happened. It is not like he's talking about something that is out of this world, something that is of science fiction. So to me, I believe it could have very, very serious implications to the image of Musalia Mudavadi, owing to the fact that he has also chosen to join hands with William Ruto, a man with a long-standing reputation of corruption, impunity, and disregard to the law. That is the side where all those who are not in good books with the law actually run to. And therefore, we can only not help but believe whatever Jirongo is saying is actually true, because birds of a feather flock together. And they also say that show me your friends and I'll tell you who you are. So if you have chosen to be with thieves, and here we have one of his former allies also coming to claim that during their heydays he was also a thief. Then he's a thief, Miriam. So let them stay in one corner, let them regroup. But one thing we really want to urge Musalia Mudavadi is for him to desist from actually insulting the head of state. he should know that the head of state is a symbol of national unity by virtue of the office that he holds. He has to seek other amicable ways of addressing the head of state rather than throwing tantrums and insults in political rallies. One thing maybe, Miriam, just to mention is that today, President Uhuru Kenyatta is tarmacking a road all the way to Musalia's home in Mululu. This is a road which has been untarmacked for the more than 30 years that Musalia has been in government. Not even when he was a finance minister, he could not allocate money to have that road tarmacked. He could not allocate money to that road when he was the vice president. He could not allocate money to that road when he was a deputy prime minister in the coalition government. So let him respect the president, and he is the least expected person to talk about governance and how the economy is. When he was a minister for finance, Miriam, the economy grew with only a paltry 2.3% in terms of GDP. When President Uhuru Kenyatta was the Minister of Finance, the economy actually tripled from where Musalia Mudavadi left it as a finance minister. Today, I was very, very much happy to read a letter written to him by Dr. Mansanga David, and it clearly outlined whatever things that the president has done to Musalia, and actually warned him not to be ungrateful and be able to destroy the bridges that they have made with President Uhuru Kenyatta over time. They will have very, very serious implications for him in the future. So if he is very wise, if I was him, I will take such kind of advice and take it seriously, knowing that perhaps when you choose a path of politics of acrimony and abrasiveness, they might have an implication to your own self. They always say that whoever digs a grave for someone could end up digging one for themselves. So to me, Miriam, I believe.
Yes, yes. All right. I apologize for that. But the 15 MCAs, that defected from ANC and Ford Kenya and joined ODM yesterday. Well, this weekend, Mudavadi's won. I don't know if he has any bargaining power right now, or I don't know. There have been a lot of rumors that have been doing rounds, but we cannot confirm that. But with this weekend, Mudavadi's position, even as perhaps what he is expected to deliver to his new coalition now, as far as the numbers are concerned.
Absolutely.
Maybe that is the question.
Yesterday, I was reading a very hilarious comment by one Kenyan on social media, and he was saying that perhaps before William Ruto advances the balance to Musalia Mudavadi, the balance of whatever money he was paid, he should do a head count in the ANC house and see how many people are remaining there. And of course, Miriam, it is going to have a very, very big implication, because remember, these are grassroots leaders, the MCAs, the MPs, these are the very people who visit their constituents at least 3 or 4 times in a month, But as a party leader, I know Musalia, the lethargic side guy, he is very lazy, I don't know if he has any contact with the ground apart from relying on what those MPs and MCAs bring on the table. So when you have these MPs actually running away from you, all MCA also decamping to Azimio, then he must be a very, very worried man. MCs and the MPs and the MCAs have their ears on the ground. And we have these infamous clip of the newly elected Matungu MP, Peter Nabulindo, actually conducting an opinion poll with his constituents, and he's asking them how many are for UDA, how many are for ANC, and how many are for Azimio. And the ground actually goes in a unanimous acclamation saying they are all for Azimio la Umoja. So when you see these MPs moving from ANC or maybe supporting Musalia to Azimio la Umoja, it is because the ground has refused. Just the other week, I was with an individual who is vying for a very top seat in Western Kenya. And whatever he was telling the committee or his strategist is that right now you can vie on any other political outfit, but not associate any outfit associated with UDA. So whenever you choose to move to UDA of William Ruto, then that is political suicide you've committed, Miriam. So to me, I think that is what is triggering that mass migration from ANC to Azimio la Umoja. And ultimately, if it is the ground that is stipulating how these MPs are shifting, how these MCAs are moving, then it means even in terms of in terms of number of votes, then Musalia is not going to bring much on the table for William Ruto, because at the end of the day, these are the same people who told their MPs they do not want to go to UDA into the wheelbarrow. They're the same people who are going to vote as dictated by their own whims, Miriam. So to me, I believe it's a very, very huge implication to Musalia Mudavadi. Perhaps whatever he thought was an earthquake last Sunday could turn out to be his own political suicide.
Okay, and maybe at this point, the bigger loser will be the DP, because if you want to allegedly spend, I would not even talk about it, but you have to get some returns, new investment. That's how business works, but I'll leave that for now. But still staying with the same story now, who will be the DP's top contenders as spoiled for choice? So they've said there for the DP, perhaps he might have, for the deputy president, perhaps Dr. William Ruto might decide to pick on Rigathi Gachagua, Mwangi Kiunjuri, Anne Waiguru, Justin Muturi, and now I see Nyoro also is being fronted as Ruto's possible running mate. So what, before we even get into that, Musalia Mudavadi, having come and joined DP Ruto, and now they're out there, campaigning together, trying to convince us they're two presidential aspirants, but campaigning on the same platform. I'm telling you, Kenya is just a wonderful, dynamic, democratic country. That's all I can say, because there's no way of explaining this kind of political nuance. But Mudavadi, I'm sure he must have a way that he thinks he will go convince his supporters that this is the reason why I joined Deputy President William Ruto. And perhaps maybe his supporters are expecting for him to be given the Deputy President's position. But as we see from the headlines, he has not made the cut to even one of the people who could be even considered for that position. So how will he continue, or how will he convince his supporters that this is a better deal for them if he does not even appear anywhere in the possible contenders?
Miriam, the only reason why the Luhya nation perhaps was a bit holding behind Musalia Mudavadi is because they thought he was going to vie for president, and that's why we had a few cliché of individuals who are actually rooting for Musalia Mudavadi. The moment they realized that he's not going to vie for president, they actually started scampering away, going to all directions. Some going to UDA, some going to Azimio, and of course, if you listen to Cleophas Malala keen enough, you realize that Cleophas Malala speaks what is on Musalia Mudavadi's mind. And the latest statement he made in regards to forming a coalition with the UDA, he said, Musalia Mudavadi will not form a coalition with Azimio la Umoja or Raila Odinga. He's only willing to join Raila Odinga if Raila Odinga will back him for presidency. And he said Musalia Mudavadi, on the contrary, is willing to join UDA so long as he's guaranteed a position in government. So for him, it doesn't matter whether he becomes a chief minister. It doesn't matter whether he becomes a cabinet secretary. It doesn't matter if he becomes a PA or a sweeper in William Ruto's government, provided he's in UDA and he has struck a deal with William Ruto. So that tells you that this is not becoming a president or a vice president to deputy president to William Ruto. To him is not a matter of life and death. And like you've said, the only contenders who are being looked at in terms of who can deputize William Ruto are just the normal allies from Mount Kenya region. So to me, I believe that will also have an implication, because the moment most people actually heard that Musalia has gone to UDA, and they knew that as per the constitution, William Ruto has been a deputy president for 10 years, and the constitution does not allow him to again deputize anyone. Therefore, it means Musalia was going to play, by default, he was going to play the second fiddle to William Ruto. They actually started moving, and some MPs actually, like Bishop Hamala and Nabulindo, started actually insinuating that they are going to move even before Musalia could make public his move to UDA. So to me, I believe this is going to be, once William Ruto announces his deputy president candidate for to deputism, is going to be the mother of all Armageddon. People are going to move in large numbers. Whoever remnants that might have remained in ANC, maybe hoping against hope that William Ruto will endorse Musalia, will actually flip over to the other side and join Azimio la Umoja. Miriam, I submit.
Very well, thank you so much. And I think at this point we move on to other news from across the continent of Africa before we, we say what really stood out for us this week. And so I'll just read a couple of news from a few countries across the continent, and then we shall have a conversation. Thank you so much. And if you're watching, and I've seen a couple of you are watching, and thank you so much for your time, wherever you are. And if you have any news from across the continent, you're free to share there, and I promise I will try to go through some of those comments, and I will share with the rest of our viewers from across the world. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're watching us from. The show is Unfiltered, our Friday edition, and we are done with the Kenyan part. Now let's get into what else is making headlines across the continent of Africa. And we start with some news from Uganda. And by day, Lieutenant General Muhonzi Kainerugamba is a commander of the Land Forces and senior advisor of special operations to Ugandan President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. By night, he is the president's son. He was taken on the role of special envoy too, flying to Kenya for a chat with President Uhuru Kenyatta and then to Rwanda. He visited Kigali on Saturday, where he had lunch and a chat with President Paul Kagame. The mood may have been made light, but the two countries have not opened their land borders for nearly 2 years, accusing each other of roiling their national security. The presidency in Kigali said the meeting was cordial, productive, and forward-looking. It added that discussions centered on Rwanda's concerns and practical steps needed to restore ties between the two countries. Rwanda and Uganda are led by the military veterans. One stopped an ethnic cleansing in 1994, while the other stormed to power with his rebel National Resistance Army in 1986. And Kagame and Museveni have a connection for more than from those warriors, but their recent relation has been lukewarm, affecting road transport and trade. So what they're saying that Museveni's son now has resumed the role of a special envoy, a peace envoy, if I might add that, and is trying to perhaps bring on a different form of maybe approach when it comes to diplomacy with these countries, and maybe that's what President Museveni, needs. But we will talk about that in a short while. We head over to Sudan, and protesters in Sudan have criticized the United Nations representative for including the junta in the transition program. Volker Perthes found himself in the eye of the storm when he announced a plan to help the country move from a military leadership to a civilian one. Perthes heads the UN integrated transitional mission in Sudan, and part of his job is to support the transition to democracy of that country. And then we go to Ethiopia, and the latest is that Ethiopia's Tigray region has received the first medical consignment since September, providing a temporary relief to the sick. The International Committee of the Red Cross ICRC became the first humanitarian organization to deliver the medical relief just days after warring sides agreed to allow aid into Tigray. ICRC Africa Regional Chief Patrick Youssef said a plane with the supplies landed in Mekelle on Tuesday. So maybe, the sentiment that Dr. Tedros raised, maybe it might have caused this to happen. So maybe it's good that he spoke, although Ethiopian government was not very pleased with that. And then we head over to Mozambique, where at least 64 classrooms in Mozambique, La province, were destroyed. In Nampula province in Mozambique were destroyed by tropical storm Ana. Authorities say more than 7,000 students may miss schools as the new academic year begins, Radio Mozambique said on Wednesday. According to officials, more than 5,000 residential houses, roads, bridges, and a hospital were damaged by the strong winds. All right, and then the latest from Burkina Faso and the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, will soon call an extraordinary summit following the overthrow by the military of Burkina Faso President Roch Marc Christian Kabore on Monday. The regional bloc strongly condemned the purge, saying it is a setback to democracy. South Africa said it agrees with ECOWAS, adding that the soldiers should return to the barracks and give dialogue a chance. There can never be a military solution to issues of this nature. Dialogue and negotiations are the only means of resolving conflict and arriving at lasting resolutions. The statement from the Foreign Affairs Ministry said Burkinabe soldiers seized power and announced the patriotic movement for safeguard and restoration that will be led by Lieutenant Colonel Paul Henry Sadaogo Damiba. The country's airspace and land borders were reopened on Tuesday, and I do not understand why AU has not suspended them yet, because that should already have happened. You know, if you were led by the military in this continent, you cannot be a member of the African Union. Yeah, one of the key requirements is you must be led by a civilian. So I don't know why the AU hasn't taken any action, or maybe they're negotiating behind the scenes and they're trying to talk to the junta and see what really is going on. I don't know. But we go to Malawi, where Malawi's President Lazarus Chakwera has appointed several new ministers in a rejigged cabinet. A statement from his office showed after the old cabinet was dissolved over corruption scandals, Mr. Chakwera dissolved his entire cabinet this week, saying some ministers as well as other public officials had to account for graft accusations made against them. Chakwera said more appointments will be made soon. And then we move on to Mali, where France and 14 other countries have urged Mali to allow Danish special forces to remain in the African country, but its transitional government insisted on an immediate withdrawal in response to Danish Foreign Minister Jeppe Kofod saying that the troops were there by a clear invitation. Mali said a decision on the Danish request in June to deploy troops was still pending. And then we go to Tanzania, where the country on Wednesday received the second donation batch of 800,000 doses of Sinopharm COVID-19 vaccines from China. The donation was handed over to Health Minister Umi Mwalimu by the Chinese ambassador to Tanzania, Chen Mingjian, at the Julius Nyerere International Airport. Some very good news. Do you remember last year, time like this, Tanzania was still under denial on even whether COVID-19 exists in that country. So that is some very good news there in Tanzania. So that is in a nutshell what we have, just a few of the news we have from across the continent. But perhaps what we could look at, Daniel Wesonga, is this new role that President Museveni's son is assuming. He's becoming a diplomat. We've seen him being sent in this country a few times to meet with President Kenyatta. We saw that he's gone to Rwanda, and now that border, I think I was sent a letter. I think the border will be opened, if I'm not very wrong, and that was successful because of his visit there. Do you think him being young and perhaps looking at the world in a different way is what President Museveni needs in terms of helping with his leadership? And also, are we just seeing somebody who is being groomed and he's familiarizing so that after his father leaves the office, he can easily just take over and continue?
Thank you so much, Miriam. And of course, whatever General Muhoozi Kainerugaba is doing is something which is not quite uncommon, because we've seen even in North Korea when the current leader, when the father died, when he came on board, the Kim Jong-un, the current leader, actually he was perceived to be young, And of course, being young, there was a lot of optimism about him opening up the country a bit, allowing some kind of Western, even commodities to go into North Korea and all that. And actually, that is what he did. And he tried even to allow some kind of things which were banned under the old regime and all that. When you go to not United Arab Emirates, but when you go to Saudi Arabia, you'll see Prince Salman, of course, also trying to do a similar thing, just moving from the usual way the old guard used to do things, and trying to bring some sense of globalization and a sense of modernity in doing things. I believe that is what General Muhoozi is also doing. We understand that President Museveni and Kagame have been comrades in boots, fighting various battles since 1980s and 1990s. But of course, they had their point of departure, disagreeing on one thing or the other. But now when you bring in Muhoozi, these are new blood, these are young person. And I believe that is the point of understanding on which maybe President Kagame got General Muhoozi. And when you look at the two leaders, President Museveni is good in terms of governance. You can see the way he has been able to maintain peace in Uganda for quite a long period of time. No one can be able to do that without having upheavals here and there in Africa. But he has been able to maintain that for over 36 years now. Just we had the other day celebrating 36 years, him celebrating 36 years in power. But when you look at his style of leadership, vis-a-vis whatever Kagame is doing in Rwanda, you realize that one is a conservative leader, another one is a progressive leader in terms of reforms and everything. Rwanda has changed in terms of even the national language. They were speaking French today, they are doing English just to align with the rest of the world. You can see the things Rwanda is doing in terms of innovation. You can see how Kigali is attracting more investors and all that. Rwanda is doing even much better than even Kenya, in some of the frontiers, even Tanzania. So to me, I believe in matters, principle is where they disagree with President Museveni. But however, being that General Muhoozi is a young person, he understands some of these radical changes that we can do in an economy, the importance of trade and all that. I believe that is where the point of concurrence that they could have had with President Kagame, and that is why today we are talking about a breakthrough in that particular dispute that has been ongoing for almost 2 years and has paralyzed business between the two countries. So to me, I believe it's a matter of individuals who can actually see the world from the same perspective. But when you put Museveni and Kagame in the same room and give them a microscope or maybe a telescope, they might not see the same thing. So, and that could be more specifically because of the age difference, probably, and also the style of leadership. So, to me, I believe Kainerugaba, General Muhoozi is going to is trying to do whatever we've been seeing across the world, just trying to bring in new reforms in terms of leadership style. But also, Miriam, he could be as well trying to position himself as the next successor, or as the successor of his father in terms of forging these good diplomatic ties with the neighboring countries so that he has an easier time ascending to power. Remember, he's a general, a well-connected general in the government, and all he has to do is just get the backing of the veterans, as they call them, those people who fought with their father in the Bush War, and also get some of his generals supporting him and go there campaign. Of course, he has the machinery and all that, and he will be able to take over President Museveni. I don't believe maybe President Museveni will be looking to another term after serving this one. And perhaps that is why now General Muhoozi is coming out from the gallery now to be able to start this particular journey of making his international connections with the neighboring countries, Miriam.
Okay, thank you. And as you were talking, I was able to get that letter that was issued between what happened in those two countries. I'll just read that quickly. Reopening of the Gatuna border post with the Republic of Uganda following the visit to Rwanda of Lieutenant General Muhoozi. Kaine Rugaba, a senior presidential advisor on special operations and commander of land forces of the Ugandan People's Defense Forces, UPDF, on the 22nd January 2022, the government of Rwanda has taken note that there is a process to solve issues raised by Rwanda, as well as commitments made by the government of Uganda to address remaining obstacles. In this regard, and in line with the communique of the fourth Quadri Party summit held at Gatuna on the 21st of February 2020, the government of Rwanda wishes to inform the public that the Gatuna border post between Rwanda and Uganda will be reopened from 31st January 2022, as it is the case for the other land border posts in the country. Health authorities of Rwanda and Uganda will work together to put in place necessary measures to facilitate movement in context of COVID-19. The government of Rwanda remains committed to ongoing efforts to resolve pending issues between Rwanda and Uganda, and believes that today's announcement will continue positively to the speedy normalization of relationships between these two countries. So I believe this is a communication from Rwanda's side. So I think that is some good news. I think this feud has gone on now for a very long, unnecessary time, because businesses have suffered, and people both from Uganda and Rwanda have suffered, who depended on that border to carry out business, for movement, and for other things. I think we've suffered enough, so I think it's about time, and that is a step towards the right direction. All right, so now we've gotten to the tail end of the show. Daniel Basonga, it is Unfiltered. It is the week that was. So I'd like to know, over this week, what stood out for you?
Perhaps the signing of the Political Amendment Act, and that is in regards to Kenya. I believe this is gonna actually now bring about a lot of political tectonic forces moving, and we're gonna see, as a result of that, we're gonna see some realignments happening, because now the timelines have to be met before the 9th of February, as well as also sometime in April, where now venerate coalitions should actually be in position so that we move forward to the election. So to me, I believe that is the beginning of the greatest political alignments in regards to the forthcoming elections in Kenya. And maybe perhaps also whatever stood out for me is that opening of the border between Rwanda and Uganda. That is something that has been ongoing for quite a long time. I remember most traders who move their goods between Uganda and Rwanda, and also to other parts like DRC, actually had a very, very rough time actually doing business. And of course, you remember Dr. Masanga being one of them, actually complained that his trucks were actually grounded for quite a long time. So I believe it's going to bring some kind of relief to the people who are doing business. And lastly, the coup in Burkina Faso. I really just don't understand why the AU has been so silent, but we understand who the AU works for, and I believe it could be the case of them lying low to their French paymaster. Remember, Musa Mohamed Faki, who is the chairman of the AU, was actually sponsored by the French to go for his first and second term at the union. So to me, I believe we might not even see the AU coming through for the people of Burkina Faso. If they do not solve that kind of Mali by themselves, then they'll have themselves to destruction. So I believe, Miriam, those are the key issues that stood out for me this particular week.
All right, very well, thank you so much. And of course, I think the opening of that border has now been made official. So I think it will, I'm trying to see if I can find any, oh no, I just missed that. I wanted to see if I could find anything, the latest from across Africa. So I was just looking on one site here that usually is up to date with the latest from the continent, and see if at all. All right, so all right, what I see here is French embassy warns against Kenya terrorism threat, and the French embassy in Kenya has warned of an impending terrorist attack targeting Western nationals living in Kenya. In an alert on Thursday, the French embassy cautioned its citizens to be extra vigilant. It said there was a persistence of serious threats and the risk of public places frequented by foreign nationals being targeted. All right, so I think I'll not be going anywhere near more of, I mean, things like this. After what happened at Westgate, I even have a fear of going to the malls, to be honest with you. But that is an alert that people perhaps hear the government's, the government of Kenya's official position on this matter. So hopefully the government will advise us appropriately and how, I mean, it will confirm, or we need something from the government. That's all I'm saying. And Morocco to reopen airspace after 2 months closure. Morocco has said it will reopen its airspace to international passenger flights next month. The North African country banned all incoming and outgoing international flights last November to try and limit the spread of Omicron variant of coronavirus. So that is also good. And also over 15,000 displaced in new Darfur violence. That is according to a United Nations report. A renewed ethnic violence in the Sudanese region of Darfur has led to loss of lives and displaced more than 15,000 people over the last week, the UN has said. That is not very good news. And what else is happening? Dozens die as Storm Anna hits Southern Africa. I think I mentioned that earlier. A new Burkina Faso leader in first speech since the coup. He talked yesterday. And Equatorial Guinea showed team value in AFCON run. And yes. And Malawi president excludes party officials from new cabinet. I think we talked about that. And row erupts online over African immigration to the United States. That row will ever continue, and president's power grab could explode in Tunisia. I think this is a story that I really covered last year so much. And so, because, the president suspended the whole parliament, and it has remained so for now a couple of months. So they're saying if he continues like that, that could create more problems. And all right, so very well. So that is just some of the things. And a police helicopter crash under investigation, that is in Nigeria. And yeah, so that is just some other news from across the continent. I want to thank you so much for your time today. And thank you so much, Daniel Lisonga, especially for staying with me this morning, and for our viewers, wherever you've been watching us from, for your patronage and your participation on the show. I've seen a couple of your messages. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you on Sunday with the African Showdown, where we will continue bringing you the latest from the continent of Africa. My name is Miriam Ogutu. This has been Unfiltered, a Friday edition. Enjoy your rest of the day and enjoy your weekend. Thank you for watching, and bye-bye for now.